This is Grace Walker. I'm the CAFE social media coordinator. And CAFE has begun a new initiative, which is Where Are They Now? Where we're going to introduce you to our past students and give you some highlights on where they are now and what's going on with their lives and how they have continued to take the CAFE dream along with them. Tonight, our featured guest is Malika Green.
My name is Malika Green. I'm a 1999 CAFE alum, started in 1996. And some of the key people who started me off on this journey were Mr. Leon Smooth Edwards, Mark Anatol, and Maureen Clement, who was my first Steelpan teacher in Trinidad and Tobago. And their influence several decades have helped me to reach where I am today.
Malika, share with us your experience with CAFE as you began and where you are now.
A lot of people may not know that CAFE was started by my mother, Lorna Green. So Malika Green, Lorna Green, there's a relation. And it did start in our house. I was 15 years old, but I had been playing pan for 3 years or 4 years already. And so it started as a summer camp in our home. A lot of young kids my age, some of who, I'm still connected with, I still stay in touch with now. And within a year, it had grown enough that we moved the program outside of the house. So it was really interesting to see this project, that my mother had been working on for several years. I think, maybe at least 2 or 3 years before it actually launched in our house, to see it come to fruition, the pans showing up, having to set up all the pans and coordinating classes around the neighborhood at different people's houses and so on. And then seeing it blossom into, a full-fledged program that involved people outside of our circle of, family and friends and so on, and reaching people all over Maryland. So, yeah.
What was your initial reaction to Steelpan music?
Oh, definitely. I started playing piano when I was 8. So music was there. I think I was 10 or 11 when I saw a steel band play somewhere, like a festival, some kind of community event. And I thought it was cool, I just thought it was neat. And of course, up to that point, like I knew my mother was from Trinidad. So then at age 12, I got to go spend a summer with my grandmother in Trinidad. And I learned to play Steelpan at the summer camp at that time. And when I returned to the States after that summer, it was with a double seconds that my parents bought for me, because I guess they heard that, I really liked it. And so I continued to play piano, begrudgingly, But, that was the deal. Like I had to play piano if I wanted to continue playing pan. But pan became the focus eventually.
So, and then you have continued your academic pursuits in the arena of Steelpan music. Expand on that for us.
Yeah, so I started out in college as a business major, but didn't last very long. I quickly changed to music. I was at Drexel University, and then eventually I transferred to Northern Illinois University to study pan seriously with Liam Teague and late Clifford Alexis, who passed away last year. So I stayed on. I finished my undergrad, and then I did my master's. I didn't know what was going to happen after that, but luckily I had a mother who was running a successful steel band program. So I went immediately into education and nonprofit administration. So, a small nonprofit, you're wearing several hats. Everyone wears several hats. So artistic and administrative. But I became very much involved in Steelpan education and trying to do new and different things and figuring out how we could really create a unique learning environment at CAFE. And then I continued in that vein when I moved to Chicago eventually, and I was in Chicago for the last 8 years and was able to start a program there as well. So I just became very much attached to music education.
What was the reaction to some of your colleagues, non-West Indian, non-Trinidadian, non-local to Steelpan music, when Steelpan music was introduced to them as part of a curriculum?
Well, it varied. By that time, or I would say in the last 20 years, Steelpan has become very well known in percussion circles.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a huge community in the United States. I mean, the United States has one of the largest collection of Steelpan orchestras and bands in the world, I think, because there's over 1,000 at least. And the States, and if you add in Canada as part of larger North America, I mean, we can't even count them all. So luckily, I was working with some people who were percussionists who were very familiar with it and loved it. But then I was working at an orchestra organization, so there were people who, as musicians, they had a general idea of what it was, but they didn't understand what it was in a music education sense.
Yes.
I had some people who felt that it was kind of like a garage band kind of thing, just like people get together. How do you teach them? Is it like, why do you need a teacher? So, I had to lay a lot of groundwork first and kind of educate people and, go beyond just telling people, well, I have a master's degree and a bachelor's degree, because unfortunately that doesn't mean a lot of things. I mean, you can get a degree in a lot of things now that people don't understand what it is. So you have to really sit down and put it within the larger context of music education and comparing it to other percussion instruments, comparing it to other orchestral instruments, and the fact that the Steelpan is a band orchestral instrument where you learn about the hierarchy of an ensemble, you learn about arranging. You can easily get over the initial hump of technique and get students learning about more complex music theory ideas much quicker than you would a student who's playing trumpet who has to learn how to breathe for the first month before they can make a sound, right?
Right.
And then just the social aspect of it as well, which is something that my students actually are much more articulate about talking about that than I am, I think. So yeah, but I think in the end, people definitely saw the huge value and still see the value of students playing not just Steelpan, but a percussion instrument and an ensemble percussion instrument.
What are some of those, stumbling blocks that you think you've encountered and that your path to overcoming it was specifically to persevere or to endure? How would you address that?
I think my biggest roadblock has really been myself. Right. And I think it is the same way for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. We don't trust ourselves. We listen or pay attention to the expectations that other people have of us. And it's just a fear a lot of times of, not pushing yourself further and saying, well, I don't know if I can do this, and what if I do it but I fail, and I mean, of course there are things like money is a limitation sometimes for some things that you want to do, or your proximity to a place, if there's a place you need to go to get a thing. But essentially, I think in general, we talk ourselves away from things, you know, and just come up with reasons why. Okay, if I don't have the money, I don't have the car, I don't have this, and I think nowadays, with the amount of information that's online, it's a it's a double-edged sword because it can be overwhelming.
Right, of
But
course,
at
it'll
the
be too
same
much,
time,
yes.
but at the same time, all the information is at your fingertips.
Correct.
So yeah, I think it's ourselves staying present, um, paying attention to how your gut responds to certain things, and it can be an excitement or it can be a fear. So I don't know. That's kind of like an answer that's all over the place. But I feel that my roadblock in the past has been myself. And it's like when I decided to just do jewelry, to go down this jewelry path, it was like, I don't know, it was like a relief. I didn't need to feel guilty
Right.
about, and that's something that I'm still exploring. I'm not saying that I'm okay with just not doing music anymore. It still comes up, but I have to pay attention to the joy that I have now while still trying to understand why I shifted. And that's okay that I'm doing both. It's okay that I'm contemplating both at the same time. But the path that I'm on feels really healthy. And yeah.
We were so enthusiastic when we saw the post on Newsday, and it shared about the experience of your work in jewelry making as a new artist in Trinidad and Tobago. How did you feel about that?
Um, oh gosh, a stepping right into something I said earlier, fear, right? I was like, oh gosh, people call me an artist. I don't know if I'm really an artist yet. I'm just a jeweler, But it's part of the journey. It's putting myself out there. And recently, that was like the third opportunity I had to kind of share my story,
Right.
with people, and realizing that it can be an inspiration for some people.
Absolutely.
To any label, if someone wants to call me an artist, if someone wants to call me just a jeweler or just a designer, that's fine too. But the point is that I am sharing my story, and I'm sharing it in my own words. And over the next couple of years, it'll change, and I'll grow and develop. But yeah, it definitely felt like a huge honor to be recognized in that, for someone to feel that it was interesting enough to want to share. So, and it also kind of validated for me my decision to go on this path too. It felt like, I do have something to share via this medium, and I'll continue to go through it until, in 15 years I decide to, become a pilot or something. So we'll see. But yeah.
So yeah, how some of these creations and what they are and what they mean, and what type of installations you see yourself doing as you move forward with the craft.
Sure. Yeah. So one thing about people in Trinidad is that they love jewelry. Trinidadians love jewelry, which is great. But there are a lot of local pieces that involve flowers. A lot of nature-themed flowers, vines, leaves, and so on. So, I started doing flowers that I thought were interesting, like the bougainvillea, which is a flower that's very abundant in Trinidad. I mean, you see them on the highway, you see them in people's yards.
Yeah.
And I started making them, and people thought, oh, I never even really thought about seeing a bougainvillea flower. And I've started making other jewelry that is, as you said, flora and fauna and so on. I am envious of the fact that Trinidadians have this proximity to nature,
Right.
and really beautiful, interesting flowers like the crown of thorns flower, which is a little 2-petaled flower that buds off of like this very thorny stem. It's you wouldn't ever want to touch it, but the flower that is produced there is so lovely. It's just these little 2 petals. And then something else that I find interesting is the acacia leaf and seed. It produces this extremely curly seed, but the leaf itself is actually an asymmetrical leaf, which I'd never seen in person before. It's a tropical plant, tree, and it's common in this area, but it's also common in Australia. So it's not something that you find everywhere.
Right.
And I think Trinidadians are just like, yes, it's tree, like look at this. So, and the acacia especially was special to me because of the fact that it is asymmetrical, and it makes me think about life and how things aren't even and easy,
Yes. Yeah. Which is what we said. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When we try to draw plants, a lot of times, and when you see jewelry that is a leaf or a flower, people represent it as if it's like posed for us, as if the the monstera leaf, which is the Swiss cheese plant that has holes in it, as if it like flattened itself out for us and it lined up its holes perfectly and everything. It's like, it doesn't look like that.
Yeah.
So I've really focused on doing these pieces that look like the plant, as if we were passing it by, as if we, just happened to glance at it, and it's kind of, half of it's hidden or bent, and maybe it's pointy, and the bottom of it is curvy, and maybe you can only see half the whole. So that's kind of my focus right now. And I do have some pieces in an art gallery, and but I haven't gone into like coming up with an exhibit or an installation yet. But I know that is on the journey.
Wonderful is that. And I want to say thank you for taking the time to be with us this evening, for sharing your information with us. What would you like to share in terms of how we can look at your pieces, or where can we follow you if you're on social media?
Sure. My website is www.malika, Malika, Rachelle, Rachelle, designs, DESIGNS.com. I'm also on Instagram under the same name, and on Facebook under the same name. And finally, I am working on a Steelpan line jewelry collection, and all the proceeds from that will go towards music education organizations. So for this year, I started it kind of late last year. So for this year, proceeds will go to CAFE. But that is still in the works, and usually people buy jewelry around Christmas time, so you can look for it for sure later in the year.
That's amazing, because one of the opportunities that we're looking at as we scope out CAFE's year is to have products that can be available, and especially at Christmas time, for our audiences to have access to purchasing, and by purchasing make a contribution to CAFE.
Right.
Thank you again so much for taking the time.
All right. Thank you, Grace. Thank you for inviting me.